Do you know where Africa's largest slum is hidden? Not in the remote deserts or war-torn regions, but right in the heart of Nairobi, Kenya's bustling capital. Welcome to Kibera, a sprawling maze of tin roofs, open sewage, and relentless resilience. Over 250,000 people live here without proper sanitation, clean water, or even official recognition. The stench of burning waste clings to the air. Children laugh as they dodge trash piles, navigating alleyways no wider than your shoulders. Why does a place like this still exist, surrounded by modernity? In this journey, we won't just show you the poverty. We'll let you hear the voices, feel the struggle, and witness the untold strength of Kibera's people. Number 1, the land without a name. You may have heard the name Kibera, but few know where that name actually comes from. In the Nubian language, Kibera means forest, and once upon a time, that's exactly what it was. A dense green area on the outskirts of Nairobi, a quiet patch of land, before it became a symbol of urban neglect. After the First World War, the British colonial government allowed Nubian soldiers, men who had served in the King's African Rifles, to settle here as a reward for their service. These veterans were granted temporary land rights, but never legal ownership. It was supposed to be a gesture of gratitude. Instead, it planted the seed of a community that would grow in the shadows, legally invisible, politically forgotten. Over the decades, what started as a modest settlement mushroomed into Africa's largest informal settlement. As of 2025, estimates suggest over 300,000 people live in Kibera. Some reports place that number even higher, nearly 500,000, crammed into less than 2.5 square kilometers. To put it in perspective, that's like fitting the population of a small city into a space smaller than New York's Central Park. But how did this happen? It's a story of rapid urban migration and chronic administrative failure. In the 1970s and 80s, Kenya experienced a massive influx of people from rural areas seeking jobs, education, and opportunity in the capital. Nairobi expanded fast, but planning didn't. Infrastructure couldn't keep up. Instead of formal housing projects, people built wherever they could, however they could. The government turned a blind eye. For decades, Kibera existed in a strange limbo, not officially recognized on maps, not given public services, yet swelling in size and population year after year. Land ownership remains a tangled issue. Many residents have lived here for generations, yet they still lack legal titles. In the eyes of the law, Kibera is little more than a gray zone. But behind that gray zone lies a world bursting with color, of life, noise, chaos, and resilience. The growth of Kibera wasn't just a failure of planning. It was the result of systemic indifference. When the state doesn't step in, people build their own systems. And that's exactly what happened here. Homes made of corrugated tin, pathways carved into red clay, entire neighborhoods stitched together without permits or blueprints, only survival as the guiding principle. Yet for all its disorder, Kibera is not lawless. It has its own rhythms, its own unwritten rules. There is order, just not the kind drawn with rulers and pencils by urban planners. It's the kind that grows when people are left to fend for themselves. So when we talk about Kibera as a land without a name, we're not just referring to its colonial past or its legal limbo. We're talking about a place that, despite everything, lack of recognition, lack of infrastructure, lack of investment, has built itself up brick by brick, soul by soul. And perhaps what it truly lacks is not a name, but the dignity of being seen. Number 2, living where no one should. Imagine waking up every morning not to the sound of an alarm clock, but to the stench of raw sewage. Welcome to Kibera, where the daily reality isn't just tough, it's barely livable. This is not a place built for people, yet over 300,000 human beings call it home. The most basic things we take for granted, like clean water, a working toilet, or somewhere to throw our trash, simply don't exist for many here. According to recent data from 2025, only about 1 in 5 households in Kibera has access to a working toilet. That means the rest must find alternatives. And one of those is what locals call a flying toilet. Yes, you heard that right. A flying toilet is just a plastic bag used for defecation, tied up and flung into the nearest ditch, bush, or street corner. It sounds shocking, even absurd. But when you have no safe place to go and no money to pay for one, that plastic bag becomes your only option. Now multiply that by tens of thousands, every day, in an area no larger than 2.5 square kilometers. Without a functioning waste system, garbage piles up fast. Open drains become rivers of filth. The air smells like a mix of smoke, rotting food, and human waste. During the rainy season, flooding spreads all of that directly into homes. And the health consequences? They're devastating. Outbreaks of cholera, typhoid, and diarrhea are common. In fact, in the last year alone, Nairobi County recorded over 10,000 cases of waterborne illness originating in informal settlements like Kibera. Children and the elderly suffer the most. With weak immune systems and little access to healthcare, a simple infection can become life-threatening. What makes things even harder is that basic survival here comes at a price. Need a bathroom? That'll cost you. Most public toilets in Kibera charge between 5 to 10 Kenyan shillings per use. That's roughly 4 to 8 US cents. It might not sound like much, but for someone living on less than $2 per day, every cent counts. And here's the irony. People in poverty often end up paying more for less. They buy water in small containers from private vendors because there's no pipe infrastructure. They pay to charge their phones at kiosks because there's no electricity at home. In Kibera, even poverty has a price tag. But despite all of this, people survive. They adapt. They find ways to build routines inside chaos. Still, the question remains. Should anyone have to live this way? This isn't just about poor infrastructure. It's about human dignity. It's about whether we, as a global society, can accept that in the 21st century, in a city with luxury apartments and tech hubs just a few miles away, entire communities still live without toilets, clean water, or a place to throw their trash. Kibera forces us to look and to ask the hardest question of all. What does it really mean to live like a human? Number 3. Education and healthcare in pieces. If knowledge is power, then many children in Kibera are growing up powerless. Here, the school system isn't a system at all. It's a patchwork, stitched together by sheer will. Most schools in Kibera aren't government-funded. They're tiny private institutions, often started by local individuals or community groups. Some are no bigger than a living room, made from tin sheets and timber. As of 2025, it's estimated that over 70% of children in Kibera attend these informal schools. But calling them schools feels generous. Many lack certified teachers, proper textbooks, or even enough desks. Picture this: 50 kids crammed into a small, stuffy room, sharing a single blackboard and sitting shoulder to shoulder on makeshift benches. No fans, no lights, just hope, heat, and chalk dust. And yet, these classrooms are full. Why? Because parents still believe education might be their child's only ticket out of poverty. Even when fees are too high, families find a way. They skip meals, take small loans, or sell what little they own just to afford a term's tuition. Still, education alone can't protect a child from disease, and in Kibera, sickness is never far behind. Healthcare here is just as fragmented as the schools. There are no major public hospitals within the slum. Instead, people rely on tiny clinics, most of them run or supported by non-governmental organizations. Some clinics operate out of single-room structures with no running water. Medicines run out fast, equipment is often outdated or missing, and trained medical staff in short supply. In 2024 alone, the Kenya Medical Association reported that over 60% of residents in informal settlements like Kibera relied on self-treatment or unlicensed herbal remedies before seeking any professional help. Why? because formal healthcare is expensive, distant, and in many cases, simply unavailable. And yet, here too we find resilience. You'll meet teachers who haven't been paid in months but still show up every morning. Nurses who walk miles just to reach patients in narrow alleyways. Volunteers who teach under trees when classrooms flood. They work not for money, but for meaning. For the belief that even one healthy child or one literate teenager can make a difference in the future of this place. But let's not sugarcoat it. These aren't feel-good stories. They're survival stories. Education and healthcare in Kibera are like two puzzle pieces left out in the rain, warped, mismatched, but still clinging to the bigger picture. The desire to learn, the right to live. These things are universal, but in Kibera, they are luxuries fought for daily. And as you'll see time and again in this community, where the system fails, people step up. They fill in the cracks with whatever they can, effort, hope, and human connection. Because here, even when the world forgets them, they don't forget each other. Number 4. The culture that refuses to be silenced. For a place so often defined by what it lacks, Kibera has something many wealthier communities have long forgotten: soul. Step into the heart of Kibera, and you'll hear it before you see it. A beat, a rhythm, a chant. Maybe it's a drum echoing down a dirt path. Maybe it's kids rapping on makeshift stages built from scrap wood and dreams. Or maybe it's the distant cheer of a soccer match, played barefoot on a dusty red pitch, using a ball held together with old plastic bags. This is Kibera's true currency, culture. And despite the poverty, the lack of infrastructure, the daily challenges, life here refuses to be quiet. Street art is one of the loudest voices in the slum. Colorful murals stretch across rusted metal walls, telling stories of hope, protest, memory, and pride. One minute, you'll see a painting of Nelson Mandela. The next, a local hero, a former street kid who became a teacher. In 2025, over 70 community art groups are registered in Kibera, many led by youth determined to use paint instead of violence. And then there's the music. From reggae to gospel, from Afrobeat to spoken word, Kibera pulses with sound. Small recording studios are tucked into corners of corrugated buildings. Musicians lay down tracks with little more than a borrowed mic and a laptop running on a car battery. Yet their voices carry far, on local radio, on social media, sometimes even on international stages. But culture here isn't just entertainment, it's survival. It's how people make sense of struggle without being consumed by it. Religion plays a powerful role in that resilience. Churches and mosques sit side by side in Kibera, their callings interwoven with the rhythm of everyday life. On Sundays, the sounds of worship spill into the streets, clapping, singing, shouting, dancing. In a place where so much feels uncertain, faith becomes both anchor and lifeline. And in between the sacred and the creative lies something else: sport. Soccer isn't just a game in Kibera, it's a movement. There are more than 100 informal teams, many of them founded by former youth gang members trying to give the next generation a different path. The fields may be uneven, the goals handmade, but the passion, pure. Still, perhaps the most moving part of Kibera's cultural heartbeat is the way children and teenagers carry it forward. Despite living in one of the toughest environments on Earth, many still dare to dream big, of becoming dancers, doctors, filmmakers, and poets. Art programs and grassroots education projects are helping them get there, one step at a time. Because in Kibera, dreams don't die. They sing, they dance, they play, they pray. And even when the world turns away, the people of Kibera turn up the volume, louder, brighter, stronger. This is not just survival. This is life, remixed. Number 5. Seeds of hope in the dust. In a place where scarcity seems to shape every corner of life, hope grows quietly, like a plant pushing through concrete. In Kibera, this hope doesn't come from outside rescue missions. It comes from within. Over the past few years, local innovators have been doing something extraordinary, turning the very problems that weigh their community down into solutions that lift it up. Trash, for example, has long been one of Kibera's biggest challenges, but now it's also becoming part of the answer. In 2025, at least 5 community-led recycling hubs operate across Kibera. They collect plastic waste and transform it into pavement bricks, eco-tiles, and even furniture. These aren't just cleanup projects, they're micro-enterprises, creating jobs while cleaning the environment. Then there's the rooftop revolution. With land so limited, some residents have looked up instead of out. They've turned corrugated metal rooftops into small gardens, growing kale, spinach, tomatoes. These mini farms not only put food on the table, but also teach urban agriculture skills that can be used far beyond the slum. As of this year, more than 300 families are part of these rooftop gardening collectives. But perhaps the most powerful seeds being planted aren't in soil, they're in minds. Across Kibera, skill centers are popping up, modest buildings that buzz with energy and possibility. Tailoring, welding, coding, hairdressing. These training programs offer young people a different path, one paved with dignity and income, not dependency. One such center, Build Her, has trained over 500 women in construction and trades once reserved for men. And they're now reshaping not just buildings, but expectations. Of course, none of this would be possible without the passion and persistence of the people who call Kibera home, and the organizations that support them. Non-governmental groups, local churches, international volunteers, all playing a role, but not as saviors, as partners. Because real change happens when people are not helped, but heard. Take the story of Amina, for example. Once a schoolgirl who walked barefoot through trash-filled alleys, she now leads youth advocacy programs that bring civic education and leadership training to Kibera's teenagers. Or James, a father of 2, who lost his job during the pandemic and started collecting plastic bottles to make ends meet. With guidance from a local NGO, he turned that hustle into a full-time recycling business. Today, he employs 4 people and dreams of scaling up. These aren't fairy tales, these are fight-back stories. They remind us that poverty is real, but so is perseverance. Yes, Kibera is still facing hardship. Yes, resources are limited, but when you look closely, you'll see something even more powerful than aid or policy. You'll see people refusing to give up. Because hope in places like this isn't a luxury. It's a strategy. It's a lifeline. It's a choice made every single day to build, to grow, to believe. And like any seed, all it needs is the right ground and the courage to keep reaching toward the light. Number 6, slum tourism, experience or exploitation. What happens when poverty becomes a postcard? In recent years, a growing number of international visitors have signed up for what's now known as slum tours. These guided walks take outsiders deep into the narrow alleys and crowded markets of one of Africa's most marginalized communities, all in the name of authentic experience. The idea sounds simple enough. Come see the real Nairobi, meet the locals, understand their lives. Tour operators pitch it as cultural exchange, a way to promote awareness, empathy, and economic support. And to be fair, there are real benefits. In 2025, it's estimated that over 15,000 tourists pass through Kibera annually. The small fees they pay help fund local projects, support guides who are often Kibera residents themselves, and bring global attention to issues of urban poverty. But scratch the surface, and it gets more complicated. Imagine living in a one-room shack, and one morning, a group of strangers walks past your front door, snapping photos, pointing at your laundry, whispering about your lifestyle. No introductions, no consent, just the click of a camera, and then they're gone. That's the uncomfortable side of slum tourism. Critics argue it reduces real lives into visual spectacle, turning hardship into entertainment. It raises questions of dignity, privacy, and power. Who gets to tell the story? Who benefits? And at what emotional cost? Some locals have expressed feeling like animals in a zoo or background props in someone else's adventure. Others, especially younger residents, say it motivates them to break stereotypes and speak for themselves. The debate is far from settled. On one hand, slum tourism can be, and sometimes is, a tool for empowerment. When done respectfully, it can challenge ignorance, humanize poverty, and support grassroots development. Many tour groups now involve pre-tour briefings, consent from communities, and direct contributions to local initiatives like schools and art collectives. On the other hand, when poorly managed, it crosses a line from education into exploitation. So how do we strike a balance? Maybe it starts with a shift in mindset. Instead of look at them, ask, what can we learn from them? Instead of chasing photo ops, listen to stories. Instead of being voyeurs, become allies. Because curiosity isn't the problem. The problem is when curiosity forgets compassion. And so, we pose this question to you, the viewer, the traveler, the citizen of a shared world. Can empathy exist without dignity? Can compassion walk hand in hand with respect? In the end, the answer may lie not in canceling slum tourism, but in transforming it. From a passive viewing experience into an active, conscious, ethical exchange. One where everyone, resident and visitor alike, walks away changed. Not by what they saw, but by what they understood. Number 7. Urbanization without erasure. What does progress look like in a place like Kibera? To the Kenyan government, it looks like rows of concrete apartment blocks, part of a national resettlement initiative to replace slums with formal housing. Over the past decade, multiple phases of the Kenya Slum Upgrading Project have aimed to move residents from crowded, informal homes into newly constructed high-rise buildings on the outskirts of Kibera. On paper, it's a bold plan. Clean water, working toilets, electricity, and legal titles, all things many in Kibera have never had. As of early 2025, more than 3,000 housing units have been built under these efforts. But turning blueprints into better lives is more complicated than it seems. Because here's the thing, people aren't just living in Kibera, they belong to it. Moving from a familiar community into a sterile apartment miles away disrupts more than just geography. It changes daily routines, social safety nets, and deep-rooted cultural rhythms. In interviews conducted in late 2024, nearly 60% of those relocated said they felt more isolated in the new units than they did in the slum. Some even returned to Kibera. Why? Because buildings alone don't create community. People do. And then there's the matter of trust, or rather, the lack of it. Many residents worry about hidden costs, unclear terms, and broken promises. In previous phases of the housing program, reports of corruption and poor construction quality have surfaced, casting long shadows over government intentions. In a system where transparency is shaky, even a well-meaning project can feel like a gamble. But perhaps the greatest tension lies in one difficult question. Can you modernize without erasing? Improving conditions, clean streets, solid roofs, better plumbing is essential. No one should have to choose between dignity and survival. But at the same time, Kibera is more than its problems. It's a living, breathing network of relationships, traditions, businesses, churches, football clubs, and storytelling corners. Take that away, and what remains is just housing, not home. So what's the way forward? Urbanization doesn't have to mean displacement. Around the world, cities like Medellin and Bangkok have shown that in situ upgrading, improving existing neighborhoods without uprooting residents, can work. But it takes more time, more listening, and most importantly, more inclusion. Development cannot be done to people. It must be done with them. This means involving residents in every step of the planning process, not just as recipients, but as decision makers. From women's savings groups to youth councils, from local builders to market vendors, everyone has a stake in how Kibera evolves. Their insight is not a barrier to progress, it's the blueprint for it. Because in the end, the future of urbanization isn't just about structures, it's about stories. about preserving the heart of a place while giving it room to breathe, to grow, to thrive. And in Kibera, that future can only be built if the voices of its people are not just heard, but honored. We've walked the narrow alleys, listened to voices often unheard, and witnessed a side of Nairobi that rarely makes the headlines. From mud walls and tin roofs to rooftop gardens and recycled hope, Kibera is not just a place marked by poverty. It is a place defined by resilience. What we found here isn't just struggle. We found spirit. We found creativity, connection, and the quiet strength of people who refuse to be reduced to statistics or stereotypes. Kibera may be called a slum, but it lives like a city of dreams in the making. So the question now is not, what is Kibera? It's, who is Kibera to you? A problem to be solved or a people to be understood? As you close this video, we invite you to carry one thing with you, a shift in perspective. Because change starts not just with action, but with awareness. And maybe, just maybe, the smallest thing we can do is to care enough to look deeper. If this story moved you, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below, or tell us how communities like Kibera inspire you. And if you'd like to explore more stories from overlooked corners of the world, consider subscribing to NVL Travel Documentary. Thank you for watching, and for seeing Kibera not as a slum, but as a symbol of untapped potential, human connection, and quiet courage.